I thought I knew betrayal until it slipped into my home, wearing the faces of the two people I trusted most. Hi, I'm Zara, and this is the story of how my best friend and my husband tried to unravel my life, only to find out I'm not the kind to break. It's a tale of secrets whispered in the dark, hands that lingered too long, and a plan I turned against them when the truth hit like a storm. If you're here for raw, real stories that twist your heart and lift your spirit, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell, because you won't want to miss how I took back everything they thought they'd stolen. Let's get started. I've always trusted my gut. It's this quiet, nagging thing that claws at me when something's wrong. And that night, it wouldn't shut up. The house was too still, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. Kyle wasn't beside me, his side of the bed cold, the sheets barely wrinkled. Then I heard it, a soft rustle, a muffled laugh slipping through the walls from Mira's room. She'd been staying with us for weeks, spinning some sob story about a breakup that left her stranded. I'd let her in, no questions asked. She was my oldest friend, my shadow from university days. But now, lying there in the dark, I felt the weight of something I couldn't name. I slid out of bed, the floor biting my feet as I crept down the hall. Her door wasn't shut tight. A thin stripe of light cut through the gap, daring me to look. I did. And there they were, Kyle and Mira, tangled in a moment that ripped the air from my lungs. His hand was on her hip, fingers moving slow and sure, tracing the curve of her side like he'd memorized it. She leaned into him, her head tipped back, eyes fluttering as his lips grazed her neck, leaving a trail of heat I could almost feel from where I stood. Their bodies fit together too well, his chest brushing hers, her hands tugging at his shirt, pulling him closer until the space between them vanished. It wasn't messy or rushed. It was careful, deliberate, like they'd done this before. My heart slammed against my ribs, not just from the betrayal, but from the truth sinking in. This wasn't an accident. This was Mira's design. I didn't scream or storm in. I went back to bed, eyes wide open, replaying every second of it. The next few days I watched them like a hawk, my anger simmering under a mask of calm. Mira's smiles lingered too long, her fingers brushing Kyle's arm when she passed him a mug in the kitchen. He'd lean into it, his shoulder grazing hers, his laugh a little too easy. I saw the threads of their little game, his late nights at work that never added up, her breakup story that fell apart if you poked at it too hard. She hadn't come here to heal. She'd come to steal. Then I found it, her phone, left on the counter like a gift. Messages lit up the screen. "She's clueless. Keep her distracted," she'd typed. "She trusts me too much to see it," he'd shot back. My blood turned to fire. They thought I was some puppet, blind and helpless. They were wrong. I'd let them dig their hole, and then I'd bury them in it. I waited for the right night. Friday, the air heavy with a storm that hadn't broken yet. I suggested a movie, dimmed the lights, and let them settle on the couch, Kyle in the middle, Mira on his left, me on his right. The screen flickered to life, but my focus wasn't there. I shifted closer to him, my shoulder pressing into his, my hand resting on his knee, light at first, then firmer. His breath caught, a quick stutter, and I felt the shift in him, the way his body softened under my touch. I traced my fingers up his thigh, slow and deliberate, stopping just where the tension built, my nails grazing the fabric of his jeans. His arm slid around me, pulling me in, his warmth seeping through my shirt as I let my head rest against his chest, my hair spilling over him like a claim. Mira stiffened. I could feel it without looking. Her eyes burned into us, but I didn't flinch. I tilted my head, my lips brushing his ear as I whispered something meaningless about the movie, my breath warm against his skin. His grip tightened, his pulse quickening under my palm. The room thrummed with it, the pull between us, the silent war with her. When the credits rolled, I stood, stretching slow and deliberate, my silhouette sharp in the low light. "I'm off to bed," I said, my voice smooth, edged with something they couldn't place. I held Kale's gaze, letting it linger until he shifted, then flicked my eyes to Mira with a smile that cut. Sweet dreams, I added, and walked away. Alone in my room, I let the pieces fall into place. They'd played me, but I'd turn it back on them. I'd draw Kale in, make him want me more than he ever wanted her, then rip it away. Mira would watch her scheme crumble, her confidence crack. I'd unravel them both, step by step, until they realized too late who'd been holding the strings all along. I didn't sleep that night. The darkness wrapped around me like a cloak, my mind racing with every move I'd make next. Kyle thought he had me back in his grasp. Mira thought she still held the upper hand, but they were stepping into a web I'd spun tighter than they could imagine. By morning, I decided I'd push them to the edge, force their hands, and watch them fall. Saturday dawned gray and heavy, the air thick with a storm brewing outside. I slipped into the kitchen early, brewing coffee, letting the rich scent fill the house. Kyle stumbled in first, hair tousled, eyes still hazy with sleep. He paused when he saw me, leaning against the counter in a silk robe that clung just enough to catch his gaze. I didn't smile, just let my eyes linger on him, slow and deliberate, as I handed him a mug. My fingers brushed his, a fleeting spark that made him swallow hard. "Rough night?" I asked, my voice slow, laced with something he couldn't read. He nodded, caught off guard, and I turned away, letting the moment hang. Mira appeared next, her presence sharp as a blade. She eyed us, her lips tightening as she poured her own coffee. I caught the flicker of unease in her. Perfect. I stepped closer to Kale, my shoulder grazing his as I reached for the sugar, my hair brushing his arm. His breath hitched, and I felt the pull of him, the way his body leaned into mine without thinking. Mira's mug hit the counter a little too hard, the sound slicing through the silence. "Storm's coming," I said casually, glancing out the window, but my eyes slid to her with a shadow of a smirk. She didn't respond, just watched me, her mask slipping. That evening, I turned up the heat. I suggested dinner, just the three of us, a cozy setup in the living room with candles flickering against the walls. The storm had broken outside, rain lashing the windows, thunder rumbling like a warning. I wore something simple but deliberate, a dress that hugged my frame, the neckline dipping just enough to draw Kyle's eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. We sat close, too close, on the couch, plates balanced on our laps. I let my knee press against his, my hand resting on his arm as I laughed at something he said, my touch lingering longer than it needed to. His pulse jumped under my fingers, his voice catching as he tried to keep up the charade. Mira sat across from us, her fork moving mechanically, her eyes darting between us. I leaned in closer to Kyle, my breath warm against his ear as I murmured about the food, my lips grazing his skin just enough to send a shiver down his spine. His hand found my waist, hesitant at first, then firm, pulling me against him as the candlelight danced over us. The air thickened, charged with something raw and unspoken. Mira's chair scraped back abruptly, her plate clattering as she stood. "I need air," she muttered, storming toward the balcony despite the rain. Kale tensed beside me, but I tightened my grip, my nails pressing lightly into his arm. "Let her go," I whispered, my voice a velvet blade. He didn't move. Later, as the storm raged on, I found Mira's phone again. Unlocked this time, a careless mistake. I scrolled deeper, past the messages I'd seen and froze. There was more. Texts to someone else, a name I didn't know. "He's hooked. Once she's out, we split it. Half the house, half his accounts." My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about Kyle. Mira wasn't just breaking us. She was after everything I'd built, a vulture circling for the kill. Kyle was her pawn, not her prize. The betrayal cut deeper, but it fueled me too. I slipped the phone back and waited. Midnight crept in, the house creaking under the storm's fury. I heard footsteps, Kyle's, heavy and restless, moving toward Mira's room. I followed. silent as a shadow, and watched from the hall. The door was cracked, and there they were again. His hands framed her face, pulling her close, her fingers digging into his shoulders as she pressed herself against him. The kiss was desperate, hungry, her head tilting back, his body pinning hers to the wall, the tension between them snapping like a live wire. I didn't flinch. I pulled out my own phone and hit record, capturing every second of their unraveling. Morning came. The storm spent, the house eerily calm. I called them both to the living room, my face a mask of quiet resolve. Kyle looked wary, Mira smug, until I played the video. Their voices filled the silence, their shadows flickering on the screen. Kyle's face drained of color. Mira's eyes widened, then narrowed. "What is this?" she snapped, but her bravado cracked. I didn't answer, just tossed a stack of papers on the table. Bank records, screenshots, every thread of her scheme laid bare. "You're done," I said, my voice ice. "Both of you." Kyle stumbled toward me, hands outstretched, but I stepped back. "Zara, I didn't." I cut him off with a look. Mira lunged for the papers, but I was faster, pulling them away. "You thought you'd take everything," I said, my gaze locking on hers. "But I've already called my lawyer. The house, the money, it's locked down. And this?" I held up the phone. "This goes public unless you're gone by noon." The room went still. Kyle sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Mira glared, venom in her eyes, but she knew I'd won. I turned away, my heart pounding with a cold, fierce triumph. They'd played their game, and I'd burned it to the ground. The air in the living room hung heavy as Mira snatched her bag, her movements sharp and frantic. The papers still scattered on the table like ashes of a ruined plan. Kyle stayed slumped on the couch, his face buried in his hands, a broken shadow of the man I'd once loved. I stood there, phone in hand, the video still paused on that damning frame, my victory cold and absolute. But as Mira stormed toward the door, something shifted inside me. A crack in the armor I'd built. I'd won, yes, but the taste of it was bitter, hollow. "Wait," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. She froze, her hand on the knob, her back rigid. Kyle lifted his head, eyes red and searching. I set the phone down, the weight of it suddenly too much. "Sit," I added, softer this time, pointing to the chair. Mira hesitated, then complied, her defiance crumbling into something fragile. I took a breath, steadying myself, and sat across from them, the storm's aftermath humming faintly outside. "I could ruin you both," I began, my gaze steady on Mira, then Kyle. "I could send this video out, let the world see who you really are. I could take everything you thought you'd steal from me and watch you drown in it." My words hung there, sharp but not cruel. Mira's lip trembled. Kyle looked away. "But I won't," I said, and the room seemed to still. "Not because you deserve mercy, God knows you don't, but because I deserve peace." I leaned forward, my hands clasped tight. "Mira, you were my sister, not by blood but by choice. I gave you my home, my trust, and you turned it into a weapon. Kyle, I gave you my heart, and you let it slip through your fingers for something fleeting." My voice wavered, but I pressed on. "I spent days planning how to break you, how to make you feel the pain I did. And I could. But then what? I'd just be another piece of this mess, tangled in hate I don't want to carry." I stood, crossing to the window, the faint light of dawn breaking through the clouds. "Here's what happens now," I said, turning back to them. "Mira, you leave. Not just this house, but my life. Take what's yours and go figure out who you are without tearing someone else down." She nodded, silent, tears streaking her face as she grabbed her bag again, this time slower, defeated but alive. "Kyle," I continued, meeting his eyes, "you stay until tomorrow. Pack your things, say what you need to, but we're done. Not out of spite, but because I'm worth more than this." He opened his mouth, a choked sound escaping, but I raised a hand. Don't. Just listen. I'm not keeping that video to blackmail you. I'm deleting it, because holding onto it means holding onto this pain and I'm letting it go. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the screen, and with a single tap, the file vanished. A weight lifted, small but real. Mira slipped out the door without a word, the sound of her car fading into the morning. Kyle stayed, motionless, until I walked away, leaving him to the silence. Upstairs, I stood in my room, the space that had once been ours, and let the tears come, not for them, but for me. For the girl who'd trusted too much, who'd fought too hard, and who was finally learning to stand alone. Days later, the house felt lighter, emptier, but mine. I sat on the porch with a coffee, the sun warming my face, and thought about what I'd lost, and what I'd gained. They'd tried to take everything, but they couldn't touch what mattered most. My strength, my choice to rise above. I didn't need revenge to win. I needed to let go, to rebuild, to find a life that wasn't defined by their shadows. If there's anything I'd tell you, it's this. Betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't have to define you. You can fight, you can hurt, but in the end, the real power is choosing who you become when the storm clears. I chose me, and that's enough.